Welcome to Color Commentary, a podcast where the stories shaping our world are told in black and white first, and then we dig into their deeper meaning in full color. Each week, I'll be bringing you the news like this. First, we'll start with what I like to call the black and white section, a clear, straight shooting rundown of the facts in a tradition of greats like Ed Bradley, Walter Cronkite, and the classic voices of journalism. Then we'll shift into the color commentary section, where I have my own personal opinions and insight. Sometimes it'll just be me. Sometimes we'll have guests. But let's figure out together exactly what this show can be, with your feedback shaping the journey. And we actually do have an email that we'll read at the end of the show. So looking forward to that, and you keep your emails coming. But for now, let's get into it. Let me tell you something about grit. I had it, still have it. I grew up bouncing between my parents' house, my granny's home, other relatives' homes, spent time in shelters, 4 to be exact. Changed schools more times than I can count. And I kept pushing. I got my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, my doctorate, got a decent job, career that I built. Was gritty as hell. But here's what nobody tells you about grit when you're black and male in America. It cost you. And nobody really got to tell us that. We just kind of know it. We know it inherently, right? But for some people that's listening, you need to hear this stuff. Let me tell you the ways that it can cost you. It costs you in ways that don't show up on transcripts or diplomas. There's a price you pay: exhaustion, hypervigilance, always having to prove yourself, carrying the weight of your whole family, your whole community on your shoulders. I call it the Black Achievement Trauma Tax. I'm going to say that again. In my book, Beyond Grit and Resilience, I called it the Black Achievement Trauma Tax. It's the toll you pay just to survive in systems that weren't built for you. So when I tell you I focus on agency instead of grit, I'm not necessarily hating on grit. I'm saying grit ain't enough. And more importantly, I'm saying we can take the best parts of grit, the perseverance, the resilience, the refusal to quit, and combine it with something more powerful, which is agency. See, the ability to understand the systems you're in, navigate them strategically, and work toward changing them, not just for you, but for everybody coming behind you, that's power. And that's why I focus more on agency than I do grit, because agency centers us a little bit more. I know this is going to be a nerdier episode, but I got you. I promise. If you stick with me, I think you'll be very happy with where we land today. So I've talked about this before, but I got some requests from viewers and listeners like you all to go deeper into this A.N.D motto that I like to mention. So I will. It's awareness, navigation, and duty. And it comes from research I did on 3 black men who share my similar profile. All of us earn doctoral level degrees despite growing up during the crack epidemic and highly impacted by the crack epidemic. I chose to study men like me because that era put black males at the bottom of nearly every measure: incarceration, health, education, economic opportunity, all of it. I studied them because I believe when you develop frameworks that work for those facing the greatest barriers, you create solutions that benefit everyone. This is the framework that's going to drive all the work coming out of the Agentic Institute, our new hub for building agency in communities. Our fellowships program will continue, but we're becoming the place where agency gets studied, practiced, and taught. It's not just theory. This is real work. And a lot of it is real work that impacted and affected my life. But let's go into some facts. Let's get into some black and white. Right now, in December 2025, we're witnessing an unprecedented collapse in black male college enrollment. A November 2025 report shows that black male enrollment in higher education has fallen 22% between 2010 and 2022 across all institutions. At historically black colleges and universities, the institutions that have traditionally been safe havens for black students, black male enrollment has decreased as well. Between 2011 and 2020, black male college attendance dropped 39%. That's more than 600,000 black male students who are projected to participate in post-secondary education that are just simply missing from the system now. And that's from the Scott Foundation for Public Education. And here's the paradox. More black students are graduating from high school than ever before, but fewer are attending college. And go look at one of my other shows where we talk about grade inflation and grade illusion if you want a little bit more insight into that. But let's stay in this history. In June 2023, the Supreme Court banned race-conscious admissions in the Students for Fair Admissions cases. The class of 2028, the first admitted after the ban, shows the immediate impact. At MIT, for instance, Black enrollment plummeted from 16% to just 5 to 6% in a single year. At Princeton, only 5% of the class of 2029 identified as Black or African American, the lowest level since 1968. That's not a typo. We're back to segregation era numbers at one of the nation's most elite universities. An Associated Press analysis of 116 colleges and universities found that the share of unrepresented minority students decreased by 2% from fall 2023 to fall 2024. But at the most selective schools, the share fell by around 5%. That's double. What does this got to do with grit? Well, let's talk about the grit industry. Meanwhile, Angela Duckworth's concept of grit, defined as perseverance and passion toward long-term goals, has become one of the most influential ideas in American education. Schools across the country have implemented grit curricula, character education programs centered on perseverance and assessment tools that measure students' grittiness. That's what they're designed to do. And the appeal is obvious, right? Grit offers what looks like a race-neutral, individual-level solution that promises to close achievement gaps without requiring structural change or additional resources. But here's what the research actually shows. A comprehensive meta-analysis found that the relationship between grit and success is weak at best, and even weaker for Black and Latino students, students from low-income communities, and students facing compound barriers. The effects are minimal. Meanwhile, recent scholarship by the likes of Sean Harper, Pedro Nagura, and Tyrone Howard consistently demonstrates that structural and cultural factors, not individual deficits, are the primary determinants of educational outcomes for Black males. So let's talk about the reality. Well, the data tells a clear story. Black males are disproportionately suspended and expelled from school. They're tracked into lower level courses at higher rates. They're taught by less experienced teachers. They're subject to lower expectations across the board. Black male teachers make up less than 2% of all U.S. teaching force, despite research showing that they have outsized positive impacts on Black boys. As Jonathan Kozol documents, American education remains profoundly unequal, and no amount of individual perseverance can overcome underfunded schools, biased disciplinary practices, and systemic stereotypes. But yet we try, and we push on. I'm one of those people that pushed on. But let's talk about what actually works. Historian Ethan Reese traces how emphasizing individual character as a solution to structural inequality has been used throughout American history to deflect attention from systemic reform. Political theorist Nicholas Tampio argues that teaching grit can actually undermine democratic education by encouraging students to accept unjust conditions rather than challenge them. For Black males facing intersecting challenges of race, gender, often class, grit interventions fail because they ignore the need for systemic change, community support, and the cultivation of agency. So I built a model. In a recent study that examined 3 Black men who earned doctoral degrees despite growing up during the crack epidemic, despite meaningful cultural differences, there were 2 African-American or Black American males and 1 Caribbean diaspora male. All 3 demonstrated remarkably similar patterns of development across 3 dimensions. Let's look at those. 1 was awareness. They developed critical consciousness, understanding that academic challenges stem from the systemic inequality rather than personal deficiency. See, they received explicit racial socialization or cultural affirmation that helped them see their heritage as a source of strength. That's really important, how you see yourself. In navigation, they all required and received strategic support, mentorship from culturally responsive adults, strategic school selection, code switching peers, peer networks, and institutional knowledge. Single mentors often redirected entire life trajectories, okay? That's how important a mentor is. It can just be one person that can set your life in a different path. And those that are getting the least from us in society need as much support as they can get. So damn it, if you've been on the fence about becoming a mentor, maybe this just pushed you over the edge. Let's move on to duty. In the study, they all maintained commitment to their communities, even while pursuing individual achievement. They understood education as collective uplift, not individual escape. The study found that these three dimensions were mutually reinforcing. Critical consciousness enabled strategic action. Mentorship provided tools to act on that consciousness. Commitment to community gave purpose and prevented cultural disconnection. That's the news. Now let's talk about it. You're listening to Color Commentary with Dr. Cole. Okay. So I got a few different thoughts on all this research, obviously, and some of my research is in there. So let's get into it. And I want to be really clear about something from the jump. I'm not anti-grit. I respect people who grind. I'm one of them. I still am in a lot of ways. The problem isn't grit itself. The problem is when grit becomes the only answer we offer to people facing systemic barriers. Here are some things that it actually gets right. So let's be honest about what it does well. When Angela Duckworth talked about perseverance and passion for long-term goals, she described something real. Everybody who's accomplished anything difficult had to push through moments when they wanted to quit. That's universal. And for Black people specifically, we've always valued resilience, determination, refusing to let circumstances break you. I mean, that's just part of our cultural DNA. Like it's in the spirituals. It's in the way our grandmothers talked. It's in how our community survived Jim Crow and redlining and everything else that was designed to crush us. So when I critique grit, I'm not saying don't be tough. I'm not saying don't push through hard times. What I'm saying is if the only thing we can tell Black males is be grittier, we're setting them up to pay a price we never talk about. And here's what happened in my research. I interviewed these brothers who all earned these doctorate degrees despite being highly impacted by the crack epidemic. Acute traumas, meaning they've seen people killed. That means that they watched their mom be beaten in front of them. It was something acute. It wasn't the new age trauma, which is still trauma. I'm not trying to get at you, but it's not somebody said this about me and my self-esteem is hurt. No, we're talking about children, best friends walking to school, and then the next day they're not walking to school anymore because one of those friends was murdered. There's a difference. So I chose this profile of young Black men specifically because during that era, Black males in these communities were at the bottom of nearly every measure you could find. Incarceration rates, educational outcomes, health indicators, economic opportunity. And it's my profile too. All three of them made it. They succeeded by every conventional measure. But when I talk with them about what it actually took to get those degrees, a pattern emerged. They all described these same things, right? Exhaustion that went bone deep. Hypervigilance, always watching how you speak, how you dress, how you carry yourself, having to prove yourself over and over and over while your other classmates got the benefit of the doubt. See, carrying the weight of your family's hopes and your community's dreams on your shoulders while you're trying to pass organic chemistry can be tough. One of the participants said it perfectly. We succeeded, but not without these scars. And I would like to add that many of those scars could have been prevented or healed and treated long ago, as opposed to these men still carrying it. See, that's the Black achievement trauma tax. It's the extra costs that certain people pay, especially Black males navigating systems designed without them in mind. These people pay this just to achieve what others can pursue without the same toll. And I knew exactly what they were describing because I paid it too. Still paying it in some ways, right? And when we celebrate achievements without naming its cost, we inadvertently suggest that this is just how success works and that the scars are part of the package. that achievement trauma tax is real and it's preventable. And let me say, I am positioning young Black men because that was the study. But I chose them very strategically, selfishly as well. I wanted to study myself, which you will hear again multiple times. I never will deny that. But also, when you serve the lowest of us and you find solutions, it serves the whole of us. So I would just be calling it the achievement trauma tax moving forward, because some Middle Eastern person might have experienced this. A Latino girl might be experiencing this. Like, this can be experienced in a lot of different ways. But I wanted and needed the extreme stories so we could find the measures that can fit the whole. Does that make sense? It won't be one-to-one all the time. But you might be watching this or listening and saying, well, I don't identify as a Black male. I'm not that. I don't have that. You got your own. And you can define your own achievement trauma tax based off the parameters that we've built. All right? So let me get back to the story. This is a little bit of my story, okay? I know you guys like when I give you a little bit of my story. I've been told. So let me listen, because y'all are helping shape this show. It's your show just as much as it is mine. So thank you, and keep the suggestions coming. Somebody said, be more personable, give more of you. So here you go. In the early 90s, when I was 11 years old and going to my 11th school at the time, that's the estimate when I sit down and I kind of write it out and try to remember. The backdrop of my life was the crack epidemic. I'm from the crack era. It was everywhere we lived. It was in Chicago, Kentucky. It was in Oakland. And my parents struggled with both crack addiction and incarceration. And when we moved to California, my mom was actually in jail in Paducah. Paducah's in Kentucky. It's where I used to live with my granny. Once she got released, she met us there. The way that I even got to California, the way that we even got there was my dad, my toddler sister, and my little brother. We got on a damn Greyhound bus, and I think it took us about 6 days to finish the trip from Kentucky to California. It was a long trip. I always wanted to see the country. I don't know if I wanted to see it on the Greyhound bus, but damn it, that's how I saw it. And I remember our shelters, man. I remember the second one. I remember the weird smells and the food and having to dig through like donation bins for clothes. I hated it. But every morning I'd wake up and get my 3-year-old sister dressed and fed and get my brother ready for school. And then we'd all leave the shelter together. Well, me and my brother would leave. They had like a little daycare center situation in the shelter, so those parents could try to get jobs and go out and work and earn and things like that, which I really appreciate. We all had a role. But I go get on the BART train. I was in San Francisco, and take that over to Oakland. BART is the Bay Area's subway system, right? Chicago has the L, New York has the subway, the Bay Area has BART, Bay Area Rapid Transit. So my mother once told me that she felt her life would have been different had she gone to college, and it stuck with me. And I was angry. I was angry at a lot. I was angry at the system. I was angry at the circumstances, my parents, and angry at how little anyone expected from kids who looked like me and came from where I came from. And it motivated me and drove me. It's why I named my company Energy Converters, which is now the Agentic Institute. But here's the thing. That energy could have gone two ways. It could have consumed me, or it could have fueled me. And let me be real with you. There have been many a times where it did consume me, and I did not make the best choices. But I was always blessed. I was always able to come back to center. But everybody's not. And I'm lucky in that regard. And here's the difference between letting that anger consume you or letting it fuel you. It wasn't just my grit. It was the people who saw something in me when I couldn't see it in myself. I didn't have a bunch of them, but I had a handful of good teachers who told me the system was rigged, but that I was smart enough to navigate it anyway. It was the community members who reminded me that getting out wasn't about leaving everybody behind. It was about getting equipped to come back and do something about it. I worked as a social worker before I went into education. I saw the same patterns repeating. Talented young people, mostly Black and brown, getting chewed up by systems that were never designed to serve them. Actually, the system makes more money the more messed up they are. You can bring all kinds of services in for the dyslexic, ADHD, problem Black child in the back of the classroom. They come with price tags attached to them. Y'all saw the episode we had with Chris Stewart where he broke that down. How much money is made off of broken Black children bodies. And I saw this, man, and I just kept asking, why do some of us make it through and others don't? Is it really about who can just grit through it and just who works harder? And that's what led me to the research. It's the most honest answer I could give you when I was doing that damn doctoral program. And at this time, when you're picking your topic, you almost are so frustrated in the program because doctoral programs are meant to break you down and rebuild you. So that's where I was broken down to. And that's the decision that I made. I wanted to understand my own journey and the journeys of people like me. So I did my interviews. And as we looked at these three brothers, there's a lot of things that came up. They came from different cultural contexts, different family structures, different parts of the country. But when I sat down and talked with them about what it actually took to get those degrees, the patterns were identical. All three had people who gave them awareness, who helped them understand the game, that it was rigged, but also helped them see their own strengths inside of it and accentuate those. All three had navigational support, mentors who opened doors, who taught them the hidden curriculum, who used their power to advocate for them. And all three of them maintained a sense of duty and stayed connected to their community, their families, their mothers. They understood that their success wasn't just about them. But here's the kicker. All three of them paid that achievement trauma tax. The exhaustion, the hypervigilance, the weight of representation, the isolation that comes from being the only in so many spaces, the issues around intimacy and how it makes you, it is very difficult for you to trust people. It could even be your spouse or fiance. And I know somebody's watching, it's like, well, just go to therapy. Everybody needs therapy and all that stuff. I get it. I'm just telling you what the data says. I'm just showing you what the patterns were that exacerbated these things. And I knew what all of them were describing because I paid it to. There's a story in my book, Beyond Grit and Resilience, where one of the people from it, he sees his son is playing basketball. I might butcher the story, but his son's playing basketball with his cousin, an older male. And, the son, something happens. He loses, he cries or something. And the older male kind of snaps at his son in front of him. And this man is a professor. This man is a distinguished person at a very reputable university. And the way he described this blackout of sorts, where he doesn't even remember, but he just remembers his hands around the collar of the cousin that snapped at his son. You get real short fuses when you come up this way because the environment doesn't allow you time to process. It's a liability. So when I talk about this framework, I'm not theorizing from the outside. I've lived this. They've lived this. And what I know from both my own experience and from studying theirs is this: grit might have got us through, but agency is what we needed to thrive without breaking ourselves in the process. And that's why the Agentic Institute matters so much to me. It's not just an organization. It's the codification of survival knowledge. It's taking what we learned, what we all paid for, and making it available for the next generation so they don't have to figure it out the hard way. This is where agency comes in, man. This is why I'm building the Institute around this concept, because agency takes the best parts of grit, the determination, the refusal to quit, the long-term focus, and adds three critical elements that grit alone just doesn't provide. You think of it like this. Grit says push through the wall. Agency says, push through the wall, but also understand why the wall is there. Find the people who can help you get over it, and then come back to help dismantle it for the next person. That's the difference. Do you get it? The A.N.D model breaks agency down into 3 parts that you can actually teach and practice. Awareness. Awareness means understanding that when you struggle, it's not just because something's wrong with you. Maybe something is, I don't know you. And if it is, it ain't just that. And sometimes it ain't nothing wrong with you at all. But it's because you're navigating systems that weren't built with you in mind. All 3 of the men in my study developed what scholars like to call critical consciousness. They understood that being tracked into lower level courses wasn't about their intelligence. They knew that being disciplined more harshly than white students wasn't about their behavior being worse. They recognized the game being played. But here's what makes awareness different from just complaining. It also means being brutally honest about where you actually stand academically. What can you do right now? What gaps do you have? What does proficiency actually require? The great Lisa Delpit taught us this years ago, that if we affirm students' cultural identity but don't teach them the explicit skills they need to succeed in the systems they're in, we're not helping them. We're leaving them unprepared while feeling good about ourselves. Black males deserve educators who say, the system is rigged and you need to master these skills to navigate it. That's awareness. You see the game clearly, both the unfairness of it and your actual position in it. Navigation means not going at it alone. Every single person in my study had mentors who changed their trajectory. Not mentors who told them to work harder. Mentors who saw something, said something, and did something. One participant from the book, DeMarcus, pseudonym, was getting in trouble constantly in elementary school for behaviors that teachers saw as disruptive. A Black woman named Ms. Robinson told his mom, he needs to be tested for the gifted program. His IQ scores came back high. Same kid, same behavior, but in the gifted program, that behavior was suddenly encouraged instead of punished. See, that's navigation. That's utilizing a mentor and help that knows how the system works, getting you those resources and putting you in a better situation. That's navigation. It's having people who understand that system, who can decode it for you, who use their personal positional power to open doors for you or for somebody else. And it's not just mentors. It's explicitly teaching the hidden curriculum, like how tracking works, how to pick courses, how financial aid works, how to advocate for yourself, what's quality for you. See, middle class white kids learn this stuff at the dinner table. A vast amount of them. I'm not saying every single one for the nitpickers out there. See, everybody else got to figure it out or be lucky enough to find a Miss Robinson. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. There's not a lot of Miss Robinsons out there. Navigation says don't leave it up to luck. Build the systems that give every kid the map. And duty means your success isn't just about you. It's about your community. It's about the people who sacrifice for you and the people coming behind you. One participant told me, I'm not giving back. That language is wrong. I'm not separate from my community such that I'm giving back to something external. I'm part of my community, and this work is how I live my values. It's not charity, it's who I am. See, that's duty. It keeps you grounded. It gives you struggle meaning. That's duty. It keeps you grounded. It gives your struggle meaning beyond the personal achievement. And critically, it prevents the isolation that comes when you succeed in systems that want you to leave your community behind. Here's the key. These 3 dimensions work together. Awareness without navigation leaves you frustrated and stuck. Navigation without awareness leaves you climbing a ladder you don't understand. And both without duty leaves you successful but disconnected. And that disconnection is its own kind of trauma. You see, agency is what happens when you put all 3 together. But you know what? You got a lot of that theory stuff and stories. Let's use some real world application. This is not just theory. This is foundation of the work that we're doing at the Institute. We're becoming a hub for agency work. We're studying it, practicing it, teaching it to broader communities. Our fellowship programs continue, but now they're part of a larger mission, building agency across the board. When we train high school students as legitimate education researchers through our Agentic Fellows program, we're building awareness. Students at Lodestar High School in Oakland discovered that students were getting A's and B's in their classes, but some were scoring far below basic on state tests. The grades were not always aligning with their reading level or proficiency levels. They learned that their grades by itself didn't mean that they were college ready. And that's critical consciousness in real time. Do you understand? Understanding that your individual struggle is actually a systemic problem. Just stay with me for a moment. If you're 16 years old and have a 4.0 GPA, and then some joker like me comes in and says, well, what, do you know what grade level you're reading on? And you're a junior, you would say, I'm reading on the 11th grade reading level. I take this English class, I got an A. I'm in AP English and I got an A. And then you find out you actually are reading at an 8th grade level. You'd be pissed, right? Well, these young people didn't just get pissed, they did something about it. And they worked with their administration, and right now they're figuring out ways to make sure that everybody in their school, regardless of the grade they got in English class, know what grade level they're reading on. And if they're behind, they are working in concert with their teacher to get to proficiency or to outperform it. And if they are outperforming it, you know what they're doing? They're saying, let me mentor somebody else then and get them where I'm at. That's agency in action. See, when we connect them with mentors or teach them how to present research to school boards or show them how to advocate for themselves and their peers, it's navigation. We're giving them a map. And it's going to help things now and it's going to help people after them. But this is planting a seed in community young people that they will carry with them moving forward. It is the basis for critical thinking that is so lacking in the world at large right now. And when they use that research to create accountability pressures on schools, when they understand that success is tied to their community success, when they come back to train the next cohort of fellows, that's duty. The A.N.D model isn't aspirational for us. It's how we operate. Well, what does this mean for you, normal person? Well, let's bring this home for parents, teachers, community members listening right now, especially in light of what's happening with Black male college enrollment. We just laid out the numbers. 600,000 missing Black male students. MIT going from 16% to 5% Black enrollment. Princeton back to 1968 levels. This isn't some distant problem. It's happening right now to real young people making real decisions about their futures. And here's what I want you to understand. This crisis is proof that grit alone don't work. These young men who are opting out of college, you think that they're not gritty? You think they haven't been told to work hard, to persevere, to push through? They've heard it all. And they're making a rational calculation. They're looking at the costs, financial debt, cultural isolation, having to prove themselves constantly in hostile environments. And they're looking at what they've seen from generations before them. They're looking at Black college graduates with higher unemployment than their white peers. They're looking at the achievement trauma tax their older brothers and cousins and neighbors pay. And they're saying, maybe college isn't worth the trade-off. Maybe the juice ain't worth the squeeze. That's not a failure of grit. That's a failure of systems. And it's exactly why we need agency. But let me talk even more direct to you, okay? Look into that damn camera, okay? Parents, you're first. If you are a parent, don't tell your kid to just work harder when they're struggling. Help them develop awareness. Help them understand why school works the way that it does. Help them see that academic challenges often reflect systemic problems, not personal failures. Connect them with people who can help them navigate. A teacher who gets it, a counselor who cares, a community mentor who's been there. And keep them connected to family, to community, to purpose beyond just making it out. They got to have something bigger to go after. And mind you, because I hate when people do this, and they still have to work hard. That's why I started this out by saying, don't just tell them to work harder. They still got to work hard. Okay? That was the parents. Teachers and school leaders, y'all are up next. If you're a teacher or school leader, look at those enrollment numbers and understand what they're telling you. When 600,000 Black males go missing from higher education, that's not 600,000 individual failures. That's a systemic indictment. Stop implementing grit curricula like they're the answer. Instead, explicitly teach students about tracking, about bias, about how power works in schools. Create mentorship programs that are formalized, not left to chance. And design learning experiences where students study their own schools and communities where achievement is framed as collective uplift, not individual escape. Now for the rest, if you're a mentor, a simple community member, you're very important. Your role is navigation. You have institutional knowledge that young people don't have. Share it. As Gillian Waller would say, give $1 million worth of game. It's the navigation piece. You see how it connects in the real world? Anyway, you get it. But help decode the system for them. Use whatever power you have to open doors. Be the person who sees potential others miss. And in a moment when colleges are closing doors to Black students, your advocacy matters more than ever. And for young Black males listening, you're making decisions right now about college, about your future. And maybe you're older than college age. Maybe you're making it about life and family. I just want you to hear this. Your skepticism is valid. The system hasn't earned your trust. But don't let that skepticism turn into giving up on your own potential. Don't use that as an excuse to give up on yourself. The question ain't whether you should go to college per se. The question is, do you have the awareness to understand what you're up against, the navigational support to help you succeed without breaking yourself, and the duty connection that reminds you why it matters? With those three things, college can be a tool you use rather than a system that uses you. And if you decide against college, which many of you will, and that's your prerogative, I'm not here to cape either way. I'm a big proponent of college, but I understand it. I understand that it ain't the same investment that it was before. So for you people that are going just into the workforce, the same things apply, same rules. You need to be able to be aware of where do my ceilings lie if I don't have this education? How far can I go? What can I do to mitigate that? You still got work to do. It's going to be hard, whatever path you take. My advice from me to you is if you know it's going to be hard, at least invest in a thing that's going to leave you something positive that you can utilize for the rest of your life. But I have no judgment. I don't know your life. I don't know your kid's life. I don't know your nephew's life. I don't know your brother's life. I don't know your sister's life. So I say all this humbly. Look, man, here's the bottom line. Grit tells you to endure. Agency tells you to understand, navigate strategically, and transform. Grit is individual. Agency is collective. Grit asks, can you survive this? Agency asks, should you have to survive this? And how do we change it? Grit celebrates people who make it despite the odds. Agency works to change the odds themselves. The research backs this up. Meta-analysis show grit has weak effects on success across the board, and even weaker effects for Black and Latino students, students from low-income communities, and students facing compound barriers. Meanwhile, studies consistently show that structural factors, mentorship, resource access, culturally responsive teaching are what actually drive outcomes for Black males. But more importantly, the lived experiences backs it up. The men in my study succeeded because they developed agency, not just grit. They understood the game, had people who helped them navigate it, and stay connected to community and purpose. And that's the motto. That's the motto. That is the motto for our communities. That's what the Agentic Institute is built to scale. And damn it, I'm figuring it out. I'm going to do it. And hopefully you'll be there to help me. Let me know if you want to help me. Respond to anywhere you watch this. I'm serious. Let's finish on the bigger picture. And this is where I know I'm going to get some critique. I've gotten it already. So let's just address it. Why center Black males? Well, let's just address it head on. This research centered Black males not because there's something wrong with Black males, but because during the crack epidemic era, Black males in urban communities were at the bottom of nearly every social indicator. I've said this already. Incarceration, mortality, general health, educational attainment, economic mobility, having a place to live. Programs got built that actively took Black men out of the homes where their children were. You understand? This is why I'm choosing that. Because here's the principle. When you develop solutions that work for those facing the most severe compound barriers, you create frameworks that tend to benefit everyone. It's not about charity or a special remedy for one group. It's strategic. So when you design for the bottom, you lift the entire structure. Think about wheelchair accessible design. I love this example, right? I do. I've used it before, and I will use it again. So let's think about wheelchair accessible designs. Curb cuts, automatic doors, ramps. They were created for people with the most significant mobility barriers. But now parents with strollers, delivery workers with hand trucks, travelers with luggage, everybody benefits. Nobody argues we should get rid of curb cuts because not everyone needs them. No. And it should be the same in educational frameworks. When you build systems robust enough to support those navigating the greatest barriers, which are structural racism, economic deprivation, community destabilization, you create approaches that rarely fail anyone with fewer obstacles. That's why this research matters beyond Black males. But it starts with Black males because that's where the greatest need existed. And because solutions that worked there tend to scale. So here's what I want listeners to walk away understanding. The Black males in my study didn't just overcome obstacles, they absorbed them. And for the record, while I only went deep in interviews with these three, there were a lot more Black males in the study, right? That corroborated or triangulated a lot of these same results. All right. I just wanted to hone it in so we can go deeper into these stories. But all of them, all of the men that I looked at that came from that era that are now in doctoral level or MBA or some type of terminal degree, they all carried the weight of systemic racism while pursuing degrees. They all maintained family obligations while navigating institutions never designed for them. They all protected their sense of self against constant assault. And here's the thing, they succeeded. By every conventional measure, they made it. But the question isn't whether Black males can endure that. They've proven over and over that they can. The question is whether we're going to keep demanding that they do. Because we have a choice. We can keep celebrating the exceptional few who survive our current approach, the ones who've had enough grit to pay the achievement trauma tax and still make it through, or we can build systems where Black males develop agency, where they understand the systems they're in, where they have people that's helping them navigate, where they stay connected to community and purpose, where thriving doesn't require heroism, where success doesn't require paying a tax in trauma. That's what agency offers. That's what we're building. No anti-grit, just pro-agency. Taking the best of what grit offers, determination, resilience, long-term focus, and pairing it with critical consciousness, strategic navigation, and collective purpose. That's the future we're building. Now, before I close out this episode, I said, when you send in your mail, we're going to read it. And we got some mail. So you ready to listen? Mailbag. Dr. Cole, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for providing a much needed voice of reason to my YouTube feed. You're very welcome. Episode 6 was my introduction to your podcast, and I found your comments on the Coates-Klein conversation to be both insightful and essential to helping me navigate my way through the current state of this nation. I appreciate your analytical approach. Thank you. Your words of advice on critical thinking and emphasis on historical and cultural context are not only a guide to me, but an example that I can draw upon in my ongoing efforts to coach my 24-year-old son who is starting his career as a teacher. I will stay tuned into your content. Regards, Gene Lombardi. Gene, thank you so much and best of luck to your son. If he does see this, young man, young 24-year-old man, I bid you well, Godspeed. And if there's anything I can do to be helpful, you all please let me know. All right. And with that, thank you for listening to Color Commentary. We love to hear from you. So drop us an email at colorcommentarypod@gmail.com. You see, we read them. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the show. Leave us a 5-star rating, share it on social media, and join us every Thursday for more Color Commentary with Dr. Cole. All right, y'all. Peace out.